Welcome back, everybody. Haunted Beard here. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to give you my official ranking of my current top 10 favorite horror directors. Now, a couple stipulations with this list. Everybody in here is alive and currently and actively working and has released a horror film within at least the last couple of years. So, unfortunately, no Wes Cravens, no John Carpenters, no David Lynch, things like that. These are current, up-to-date, actively working horror directors. With that being said, here we go. So kicking things off at number 10, we've got Justin Benson and Aaron Morehead. And they've done films like Resolution, The Endless, Something in the Dirt, Synchronicity, and Spring. And I've seen everything they've done with the exception of Spring. And I've been just a big fan of these guys for a handful of years now, and most of their stuff is more kind of independent, lower budget stuff. But man, these guys just have creativity for days. Some of the ideas and the concepts they bring to these movies, I think, are pretty great. Not every single film of theirs has worked for me, but even the ones that I didn't absolutely love still had something in it that was worthwhile, still had just amazing creativity and ambition and things like that. And so I hope to continue to see these guys grow and improve. They don't currently have anything in development that they're working on as far as directing or writing, but whatever it is, I will be sure to check it out. So they are my number 10. Coming in at number 9 is James Wan. And now James Wan isn't strictly a horror director, but has given us a handful of, I would say, are pretty close to horror classics at this point. And so whenever he does bring us a horror movie, you can bet it is pretty much must-see stuff. My favorite films from James Wan are going to be Saw and his latest, Malignant. Man, I was a huge fan of that movie. Obviously, Saw is great. I would say it's a classic at this point. I've reviewed the entire franchise on my channel. The original is my favorite, so check that out if you want some more in-depth thoughts on that. Malignant, though, man, this was such a divisive movie. But man, I thought it was pretty fantastic. It was so unique and different and just made some wild and bold and crazy choices and went into some wild, bold, and crazy directions as well. And so I hope to see James Wan continue that trajectory. His next film is going to be the follow-up to Aquaman, but hopefully after that he'll get back into the horror genre again. I hope he's able to channel just the ambition and the creativity that he gave us with Malignant into whatever his next project may be. I just really feel in that film that the studio just kind of let him loose and just go for it. Obviously, other films of his that are really good. You've got The Conjuring, Insidious, I think is really solid as well. And so, yeah, James Wan, top 10, number 9. Coming in at number 8 is Leigh Whannell. Now, being that this list is the top 10 directors, I'm not really factoring in Leigh Whannell's writing credits here, even though I probably should give him a little bit of a shout out because his contributions to the Saw franchise certainly are pretty fantastic. And his involvement, especially with those first two in the writing credits, make those two the best in the franchise, and he helped really birth that entire franchise with the story and the idea. So, however, being that I'm just focusing on the directors, he's only got 3 films, and I've only seen 2 of them. I haven't seen Insidious Chapter 3, but Upgrade and The Invisible Man, I think, are both pretty fantastic. Upgrade's got a bit of a sci-fi twist to it. I love how he handled and directs the fight scenes in that movie as well. And one thing about Upgrade, too, I love the bleak and dark ending that Whannell decided to go for. I thought it was just fantastic. He just really owned the horror element in that movie. And then Invisible Man, Elizabeth Moss gives just a great performance. And man, the scene at the restaurant, the dinner table scene with the knife, I think is one of the best horror scenes in the last handful of years. Leigh Whannell gets all the credit there. That movie is just really effective, a great central performance. I love just the modernized, updated version of this. It's an old story and an old movie, but this is where a remake is totally warranted. And I think it's just fantastic how he took that old story and modernized it and updated it. And I just think it's a fantastic movie. So that is why Leigh Whannell sits at number 8. Coming in at number 7 is Mike Flanagan. And Mike Flanagan is a bit of a unique one for me because I've been a significantly bigger fan of his TV stuff versus his movies. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't been the biggest fan of his movies. I wasn't a big fan of Dr. Sleep. I thought Hush was pretty good. And Gerald's Game I thought was okay. It was kind of a 50-50 movie for me. But his TV series that he's done, I think, have been absolutely fantastic. And some of the best horror we've gotten in recent years. The Haunting of Hill House, I think, is amazing. Haunting of Bly Manor, not quite as good, but still really solid. But his highlight for me is Midnight Mass. I thought this was just pretty much masterful. I absolutely loved it. I think it was just fantastic. The performances are great. Flanagan is just a guy who I think needs more room to kind of flesh out his characters and his stories. He works better, for me anyway, when he's got 8 episodes or whatever to really flesh out the story. He just thrives under that bigger scope, longer format. And so his next upcoming series on Netflix is The Fall of the House of Usher, which is based on some Edgar Allan Poe stories. So I am all kinds of fired up for that. So for me, while his movies have been hit or miss, he has more than made up for it with his TV series. As I said, he's given us some of the best horror TV that we've seen in recent years. I cannot wait for The Fall of the House of Usher. And so just by his TV stuff alone, he more than makes up for it with his TV series, and that's why he makes this list at number 7. Coming in at number 6 is David Bruckner. And in Bruckner's earlier part of his career, he gave us a couple of short films. First one was a part of the original VHS anthology, and one of the better segments there, Amateur Night, which I still think contains the best acting performance in that entire franchise, played by Hannah Fierman. But just a solid short there with a really great and memorable and bloody ending. That's just a lot of fun. And then he gave us another segment in another horror anthology, Southbound, which overall the film is okay, but Bruckner's segment is definitely the standout in that as well. But then he started cranking out some feature-length films, and his 3 feature films that he's given us, I think, have all been pretty solid. Started off with The Ritual, which is just a really kind of twisted and dark, I guess you could kind of call it like a creature feature, but just some really nice suspense building in that, some really disturbing imagery in that. The creature design's pretty solid as well. The Night House, I think, is also just a fantastic kind of twisted sort of ghost story with a fantastic performance by Rebecca Hall. And then last year's Hellraiser, which I really enjoyed as well. I think he just has a good visual eye. I really like just kind of the design of the Cenobites there. There's some really just memorable dialogue. There's a couple sequences in there, particularly the scene where they're in the van. Just really standout stuff, really memorable stuff. He's just really talented director, and he's actually going to be returning back to the VHS franchise up next. He's going to be directing another short film segment in the latest VHS installment, VHS 85, so can't wait to see that. But yeah, David Bruckner is pretty solid, pretty consistent. That is why he's my number 6. Coming in at number 5 is Ty West, and if I was making this movie before last year, he probably wouldn't even be in the top 10. But because last year has got to be one of the single greatest years for any horror director ever, as Ty West cranked out 2 great films with X and Pearl. And he just right there has firmly established his spot on my list. In addition to Pearl and X, which I think are his 2 standouts and best work, Ty West also directed a segment in the original VHS film that I gotta talk about, and that is Second Honeymoon, and this is really, really great. It's the best segment in the first VHS film, and I think it is borderline in my top 5 for the entire franchise. It has one of the most twisted, dark, and disturbing and messed up endings in that entire franchise. Yeah, it's really, really great. But then what he did last year with Pearl and X, I mean, just launched this guy into the upper tiers of horror directors working today. I've talked about both of these on my channel, so go check out my reviews for them. And yeah, they're just fantastic. Mia Goth is phenomenal, and I think he just directs the heck out of both of these things. They're just awesome. I cannot wait to see Maxine. Depending on how good that is, he could definitely move up a couple spots real shortly, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, Ty West is number 5. Coming in at number 4 is Alex Garland. And Alex Garland has a penchant more for kind of like sci-fi type horror, as he's given us films like Ex Machina and Annihilation, and also the miniseries Devs, which I think is just fantastic, as it just deals with a lot of really interesting and thought-provoking themes. It's just a great sort of psychological thriller mystery as well. Really solid performances. And Ex Machina, I absolutely love. I think Alicia Vikander in it is really great. And also Annihilation, I think, is just really fantastic. He's got just a great visual eye. He's just really good. He's able to execute just some really, I think, kind of more high concept, really thought-provoking and interesting sci-fi elements into his horror films. And so really love what Alex Garland has been bringing. Wasn't the biggest fan of Men, but I do think there's a lot of creativity and ambition in that movie as well, even though it didn't totally come together for me. But anything he's done has just, I think, really been interesting and very ambitious. And so, big Alex Garland fan. That's why he sits at number 4. All right, next up for me, coming in at number 3 is Jordan Peele. And obviously, you got Get Out, you've got Us, you've got Nope. Jordan Peele, man, is just at a different level, and this may be a bit of a hot take, but my favorite film of his is actually Us, and I know that that probably puts me in a very small minority, but that's just how I feel. But all of his films are very unique and just really stand out. He has an incredible directing voice. You know a Jordan Peele movie when you see it. He's an auteur. You just know it's a Jordan Peele movie when you see it. He was able to just capture such a big scope, just this kind of epic scope-like feel with Nope that I thought kind of showed some more of his just range and stuff like that, which I really liked. And just all of his films too, just they have a lot of layers. They have something to say. They're interesting. They're thought-provoking. They reward multiple viewings, and you just know he's loading things with symbolism and metaphor, and there's just a lot going on and just to kind of think about and chew on, and he's just great. I love just everything he does visually. I think just really stands out. As I said, Us is my favorite film of his. I think Lupita Nyong'o's performance in that is just fantastic. I think she's really, really great. He has another film that has been announced so far. It is just the untitled 4th film by Jordan Peele, but it is slated for release Christmas Day of 2024, so I'll be counting down the days. I'm excited, but that's why Jordan Peele comes in at number 3. Okay, my top 2, and this was almost an impossible decision to make. You could really flip a coin here. These two are my clear number 2 choices. They could flip-flop depending on the day and depending on the mood. But as of right now, my number 2 is Robert Eggers. And Robert Eggers has given us The Witch, The Northman, and The Lighthouse. And all those films, man, are just fantastic. I cannot wait for his latest film, Nosferatu. Just like Jordan Peele and my number 1, which you maybe have guessed it if you've watched any of my channel lately. These guys are just, they're auteurs. You just know their movies when you see them. They just have such a distinct style, and Robert Eggers is obviously no exception. I've talked about and kind of given little reviews on his short films as well on my channel, but man, his visual presentation is just phenomenal. And one of the things that I think sticks out the most for him is just his authenticity. All 3 of his feature-length films have been kind of like period pieces, and just everything about them just rings true, and it just feels real. From the setting to the costuming to the dialogue, it's just phenomenal. And his movies are just loaded with all sorts of wild and craziness. The Witch, I just love the kind of the religious aspects he brings to it. Just some really solid performances. The Northman as well. Just some amazing and beautiful camera work in that film. More great performances. But The Lighthouse for me stands out. That is probably my favorite horror film, at least of the last 5 years or so. I think it's just fantastic. I really need to do its own individual review for my channel, but I love it. I think Defoe and Pattinson are awesome. I just love the experience that it gives me every time I watch it. It is a complete and total descent into pure insanity and chaos. but it's just such a fun ride to go on. I absolutely love The Lighthouse, and so for me, that is why Robert Eggers sits at number 2. However, my number 1 today anyways, like I said, tomorrow it could flip with Robert Eggers, but today it's Ari Aster. And Ari Aster, you've got Hereditary, Midsommar, and Beau is Afraid. And all three of these, I think, are like borderline perfect. I mean, they're like, I think, horror classics, at least in my book. And I really do need to give Beau is Afraid another watch because I've only seen it once. But man, I was just kind of blown away by that movie. I think Hereditary, it's safe to say at this point, even though the movie's only like 5 years old, I mean, it's a horror classic. It's destined for that type of trajectory. I think it's fantastic. And I've talked about all these movies quite a bit lately on my channel, as I just did a full Ari Aster ranking. Toni Collette's performance is one of the very greatest performances I've ever seen. That movie has a handful of just phenomenally directed scenes that have embedded themselves in my mind that I will never forget. Same thing is true with Midsommar. Just visually, the movie is just beautiful and gorgeous, but it's just, amongst all the pretty imagery in that movie, there are moments that just are horrifically disturbing and really, really memorable. And then Beau is Afraid. What a just wild, insane, crazy ride that movie is. And I can't wait to go on it again. I really need to watch it again. But yeah, it's just a blast. There's a whole lot there. It is just a weird, crazy movie. But Joaquin Phoenix is fun to watch. There's a lot of just kind of layers to dig through, and it just goes into some really unexpected and just wildly creative and ambitious places, and it's just a whole lot of fun. Like I said, the movie pretty much kind of blew me away, and so, yeah, those are my thoughts. Anyways, those are my top 10 directors. Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear some of your favorite directors. Let me know what you think of my list. If you like it, if you think I'm crazy and out of my mind, whatever, hit me up down below. Would love to hear from you either way. I appreciate you watching. That is all I got for you. Like always, hit that subscribe button. It's all horror and thriller movie content coming at you here. And I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.